This sample is the self-lined patch pocket. And this kind of pocket is used when there's concern about your fabric fraying. When working with sheer fabrics, it's important to self-line these fabrics as well. Notice there's no hem stitching up here because the pocket is completely lined. To start with, you will need 2 pieces of your self-lined patch pocket, and notice the marking here for the opening. You'll also need a 6x6 square. We're going to take our 2 pocket pieces and put them right sides together. Then we need to mark our pivot point. So use your little 12-inch ruler, and we're going to bring the point of the ruler here in the corner so we have a 5/8, okay? And put a dot. That's your pivot. Do the same thing in the opposite top corner, 5/8. That will really make it easier for you to pivot. You can do the same thing here, but you'll want to come in diagonally 5/8. Or you could even transfer your stitching from your pattern if you wanted to. And then right here, 5/8. Then you want to make a mark somewhere to know when to begin and stop. So that will be the opening for turning. Okay, you could pin those 2 layers together if you wanted to. And now we'll take them over to the machine. We'll begin at this opening mark, 5/8 seam allowance. We'll back stitch a couple of stitches, and then we'll stitch up to our first point. Needle is down. Okay, that looks good. Come across, 5/8 seam. Stop at your next point. Then come straight down. This mark looks a little low, so I'm going to stop right above it. Maybe one more. Okay, this one's diagonal, but it's still a 5/8 seam. Come down to your bottom mark. We want to keep this pocket symmetrical, so those markings are really important. Pivot to your other corner. Let's check that one out. Okay, that one's good. And now we're going to go up to our other opening mark, and we'll stop and we'll back stitch. Then we'll cut all our thread tails. Okay, we've got a 5/8 seam allowance, which can be bulky when we turn that right side out. So we're going to end up trimming that down. But first of all, I like to take it to the ironing board and press our seam open. That will help us once we turn it right side out to really press open nicely. So we'll just open up our seam like this and press. And do that to all sides, including the open side. And you'll be amazed how well your pocket will turn right side out by doing this. You can do just one side, or you could go ahead and flip it and do the other side as well. Oops. It's better to do it now before you trim your seam allowance off. Okay, then we can temporarily flip the seams back. We're going to trim off our corners diagonally so we don't have overlapping bulk. And then we can trim it down to 1/4 inch for everything else. If your fabric was bulky, you could even grade your seam allowance. Okay, now we're going to turn our pocket right side out. Oops, I missed one. Okay, find our opening, turn it right side out. Use your turning tool to gently nudge your points. When we press this, we want to make sure that we press it right on our seam so we don't have one fabric layer peeking out on the other side. Okay, we're going to get ready to press that. We want it right on that seam, so if you need to, you can help pull it out a little bit with a pin. Sometimes I rub it in between my nails. So you choose which side you want to be the top side. Go ahead and press on all of these seams. You want to look at it, make sure it looks symmetrical. You could even fold it in half to make sure that it is symmetrical and even, that your point's right in the center. Okay, now we have that opening right here. It's been pressed under, but we don't want to leave it that way. We want to go ahead and sew that closed. So you'll take a needle and thread, and you want your thread to match, but I'm doing it in contrast so that you can see it. I've knotted the end in just one thread, ply, and then do your slip stitch across that opening. Remember, the slip stitch is stitching in the fold, forward 1/4 inch, and then prick stitch into the other fold. And with matching thread, you'll hardly see that at all. Now that we come to the other end of our opening, we'll go ahead and do a prick stitch and pull our thread to create a loop. Needle goes into the loop, guide the thread to the fabric. There's a single knot. Repeat right next to it. Needle goes into the thread loop. Pull it tight. Now that we've got our knot, we'll take our needle in between the layers, come about 1 inch away and bring the needle back out, pull the thread tight, and cut your thread tail, and it will be hidden on the inside. Okay, that pocket looks really nice, and we're ready to put it on our 6x6 piece. We'll center it. You decide how many pins you need to put in that. Now we are going to do the triangle reinforced corner. So I need to mark where it's going to begin and where it's going to end. Now you could do that with a water-soluble marker, with a pin. I'm going to measure 3/4 down from the top of the pocket. 3/4 and 3/4, just so I know where I'm going to do that corner. And I could even draw that in if I wanted to. We want both tops of the triangles to look exactly the same width, so I'm going to go ahead and measure 1/4 inch in from the edge here, measure in 1/4 inch from this edge. I'm looking at that corner and I see it's a little rounded. I think I could pull a little bit more fabric out of there. So I'm going to just work on that for a second. Okay, so we've got our 3/4 marking here, our 1/4 inch marking here. Now we're ready to take it to the machine. We're going to start at our side edge at that 3/4 mark. We're in from the edge about an 1/16 of an inch. We'll go ahead and put the needle down. I'm not going to backstitch. I'm going to pull my threads to the back side when it's all finished. I'm coming up at a little diagonal to reach this 1/4 inch mark. And this is our reinforced corner. Peek to see how many more stitches you can do to get to the top without going off. Pivot to the corner. Trying to decide if it's 2 or 3 stitches. I'm going to try to do one more half stitch, but I'm only allowing my fabric to move half the amount. So you can kind of control that last little stitch. Okay, now we're pivoting and turning. I'm not going to stitch over that. Okay, now I could go ahead and pull that to the back side now if I wanted to, but I'm just going to get those thread tails out of the way so I can pull them through later. The edge of my pocket is on the inside corner here of the right toe. Get ready to stop when you get to about 1/16 inch away from that corner. Pivot. Come to the bottom point. It looks like I could do one more stitch to get to that point. Pivot. Take your time so you can stay nice and accurate. Okay. Now the home stretch. Remember, we're going to stitch all the way to the top, but not off our fabric. We can do one more stitch. Okay, we're going to pivot and stitch across the top so we get the same width of the top of that triangle. Looks like I can do one more that will get me a 1/4 inch in. Now my 2 triangles will look the same. I'm pivoting all the way around so I can do my diagonal stitching down to my 3/4 mark. Take your time so you can end right on your edge stitching. Okay, that looks really good. We'll get the needle up, give yourself a long thread tail. Now we're going to turn it to the wrong side where the bobbin threads are, and we are going to pull on a bobbin thread. And by doing that, it makes the needle thread loop to the back side. I can see it a little better because it's a slightly different color. There's my needle thread. Now let's go to the opposite side and pull on that one. That one doesn't want to pull through. It's possible that I stitch through that thread. So we may have to come back to that one, and I can show you what to do in that case. Yep, that doesn't want to come. So we'll take care of this one first. We're just going to do a square knot. So right over left, left over right, get a nice strong knot, and then we'll cut our thread tails to about a 1/4 inch. On this other one, we're going to have to use a needle. So I'll get a hand needle and I'll come to the right side so that I can thread this front thread, the needle thread. And then you're going to insert the needle right there at your dot through the stitching to the wrong side. There. Now we'll take those 2 threads and do another square knot. This way you have no ugly back stitching there at your reinforced corners. Then cut your little tail off, and we've got our nicely stitched lined pocket.